Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Coach T's Remote Learning Neighborhood video number 4. I think this is now probably the 5th or 6th try, so hopefully it'll work. But again, welcome to Coach T's Neighborhood, which was a little bit better than Mr. Smith's Steeler neighborhood that he's been tweeting about. Okay, but anyway, we just know that all the teachers and all the admin are missing you like crazy, and I wanted to start off with a little announcement that they put together that you've probably seen floating around Twitter world and Instagram world. Wrangler Virtual Spirit Week. Maybe for every day of the week, we've got a little maybe activity for you to do to show you, what you're maybe learning on your own. Today, showing you in the comfort of your own home, maybe giving Coach T a shout out about some of the history that you've been learning while you've been away. But and using the Twitter handle at SBMS Wranglers. Okay, but that's the just the quick announcement to share from all the admin at Spring Branch. But where are we as far as studies, and what have I heard so far, and what are some of the things that kids have been asking about? Okay, first of all, lesson-wise, we are on the industrial era, reform era, and hopefully, being able to recap that today, and maybe moving on to Western expansion. But I wanted to show you. And I'm trying real hard to keep it to 15-20 minutes. Like I said, this is take number 6, and it's failed miserably on all of them. So I'm hoping this one is the one that works. But I want to at least go over that, answer some questions that I've heard or that I've gotten today, and hopefully give you a little activity for you to do that we can pick up from tomorrow. Okay. But first of all, remember Coach T's website, which is just a continuation of Colonial Continues. Okay. Coach T's website has got, the comic book version of the history book that you probably not told your parents about, all my notes, and then we've been using this chapter 14 notes, reform era. You see over here on the bottom, it'll have Quizlets over here on the bottom that are related to what I'll show in the video today to practice some hashtags. But anyway, and I'll be hopping back and forth between, some PowerPoints and PowerPoint and stuff like that. But I did get a text message today from a young lady who is working on her A through Z project. And we had a good conversation about the Gettysburg Address and our tools of analysis. So let's pick up there to address what she discussed, and also that'll help out everybody else, okay? Because, it's always good to review A through Z. First of all, we went over these different tools as far as what they stood for, and knowing your weapon of analysis, but then also knowing how to use it. Okay. So, and again, another thing to also remember when we do these videos, you can always pause something if Coach T goes quickly through the discussion, and then take a little screenshot of it. But we talked about the Gettysburg Address, and then I told her what the thing stood for. But then I had to remind her, and I sent her in the text message that on here on Coach T's website is also, if you've done, when you're using the reform era and you get these PowerPoint notes that are kind of like our textbooks for these discussions, and you're reading them over or using the online text, whatever it is that you want to use. On the website, it also has the A and the B version of the project. And remember, in the beginning of every project, it has this quick rundown of what the tools stand for. So if you don't know what, if you're using optic, what the inference or interrelationships mean, it's got a quick definition. The one that y'all might be using more and more, HIP, which is what the high school wants. Okay, what does point of view mean? So when we had our discussion kind of back and forth about the Gettysburg Address, I believe we were using purpose and point of view. What is Lincoln talking about in the Gettysburg Address, in that excerpt that was given to you? Is it about slavery? Is it about equality amongst men? Is it just about the Civil War? And then the point of view is, what does the man's feeling, how is his emotion and feeling and understanding of the concept different than from somebody else? What is his point of view? Not first person, not second person, all that kind of stuff. How does he feel about the purpose? Because during those sectional sides, whether it be from the North and the South, people have different point of views about the idea of the birth of a new nation, or the birth of a new group of people's freedoms, the purpose of the Civil War. They'll have different opinions about it. Okay, so that was a great conversation today. So just to kind of, brush up on some A through Z. Okay. All right, so when we left it off last time, we looked at this image right over here. We did a quick optic on it, okay? And we had discussed this idea of the Industrial Revolution leading to a new social class structure, the idea of immigration influencing city life, especially in the Northeast, okay? Major cities there. Strife in Germany, political strife causing people to come over, maybe come as far as Texas. Then also the Irish potato famine leading to immigrants coming over, and the idea of rich fat white guys being in charge because factories in the industrial age, mass production, interchangeable parts leading them to have a very favorable, very good life, while even, in one street you'll have the rich owners on one side and then the tenement housing on the other. But we also discussed this idea of tough times, okay? People not getting along, okay? People like the guys in this picture preventing this immigrant from coming over and not allowing him to have the opportunities that their forefathers gave these rich fat white guys. The creation of political parties to make immigrants' life even harder. We talked about, different things that come from the industrial age, as far as, like also different movements, transcendentalism, middle class structure. But then there's this idea that we wanted to tackle today of, there are bad things, that need to be fixed, hence the birth of a reform era, okay? So before we do, can you maybe pause the video and give yourself a quick check on these? And when you unpause, you'll probably hear Coach T going over some, okay? All right, so nativist. Did you know that that's a person who hates immigrants, okay? Somebody that maybe loses his job because Seamus O'Toole comes over from Ireland and takes his job because he can work cheaper pay. Will he now then have hatred towards him? Okay, a topic that is very cyclical. Know Nothing Party. Did you know that was a political party their foundation was based on hating immigrants, trying to pass laws that don't allow them to have weapons or have to work longer hours or makes it longer for them to become citizens? Do you see also during this time period the emergence of a new social class structure, somewhere between the rich and the poor, the merchants, the people that like we'll talk about today, the young woman that can use the Isaac Singer sewing machine and carve out a little shop on the side or a business on the side of hemming clothes or making new dresses that are more crafted, more that are nicer than the garbage coming from the factories. Transcendentalism. We see also a continuation of the Hudson River School movement and transcendentalism, like guys like Thoreau and Emerson, telling people that be self-reliant, like Emerson writes, be self-reliant, dependent upon yourself, rise above materialism. Henry David Thoreau in Walden showing you that he can live without the materialistic goods from the industrial age. And then a topic that is going to be infused in our discussions today, okay? The Second Great Awakening, okay? A Christian renewal movement that fuels reform, okay? Because we see ills in society and they need to be fixed. And I asked you last time to look and at these different movements. And I refer back to a foldable that we did in class in prior years that we didn't have a chance to do this year, which is a foldable, a flip chart. And if you are really bored, I will make a special video for you to show you how to make it. But it is a foldable that you can rank the reform movements with facts from order of from least important movements, and they're all important, least important to the most important. And then if your teacher asks you to maybe give some bulleted facts on each one, you flip the chart, and therefore you can put, like right over here, various facts, and also tie them into visuals. So you can do a low level or a high level one. But the movements I asked you to look at last time was prison, temperance, education, women's rights, abolition, and as you can see from this young lady that put it together, very powerful stuff, very visually strong. Okay, but let's look at some of these movements that we were supposed to kind of look at. The first one was the temperance movement, and here is a picture that I'll probably make a nicer version of right there, of a movement that is related to alcohol. Here you see a depiction of how in the 1800s people were blaming everything on alcohol. And it's not good to drink 7 gallons of alcohol a year, but here we see the progress from having a social drink with a friend and then leading to death and suicide. Okay, the temperance movement was a movement to curb alcohol abuse. Okay, You would have people that would be um, uh, basically saying that all the societal ills can be traced back to people being drunk, okay? And therefore you must learn how to curb rather than prohibit alcohol consumption. So prohibition in the 1900s is a little bit different than the temperance movement of the 1800s. There it's to curb it. Now there were some states like Maine that were pushing for prohibition, but go to church and Lyman Beecher, the preacher, will teach you how that society will be better if you just curb alcohol abuse. So probably one of this easier movements to know or discuss. Okay? Temperance movement. Next one. Okay, there's that picture again. Very powerful. Maybe something for A through Z. Okay. Then the next one we had to look at was take a look at these pictures and see the little hashtag that comes up in front. You should maybe see that this is tied into prison reform. Okay. A lady known as Dorothea Dix will be the main crusader or reformer for prison reform. And what you need to remember about a reformer is those are people that are going to be very persistent, okay, and they're going to be very persuasive. And persistent, I mean almost like a pain in the butt. Okay. In order to get people to change, you have to be persistent. Okay. And I always tie back to a movie that one of my favorites, Shawshank Redemption, where the main character is trying to build a library in the prison, and he sends a letter every day to the people who can make that change, which is the government. And he sent a letter every day asking, pleading, saying, telling people how bad the conditions were and how good it is for prisoners to have an educational opportunity to maybe study for a test so that they can get their high school equivalency. And he never got a reply, but he kept on doing it, didn't give up. And then one day a letter comes in saying, here's $600 from the government, build your library and leave us alone. And what did he do? He wrote another letter the next day. And he continues at it. Just like Dorothea Dix realizes that prisons are barbaric and they're also lacking in facilities and proper training. Very common for people to be thrown into boxes, stripped down naked. You see some of the different tools that they would have up there. And the dehumanizing aspect of prison. The whole purpose of prison is to reform, to rehabilitate, to teach a person a skill so that when they come back into society, they don't revert back to stealing. They maybe have a skill that they can go into a factory and work. And I know we as a society make it difficult on prisoners by treating them as and not giving them that opportunity, which is a discussion that could take more than 20 minutes. But that is the purpose, as according to Dorothea Dix, as far as what prisons should do. Let's also build mental institutions. You can't just find somebody in the street going, and then go, oh, he's crazy, and then throw him into prison. He needs to have a mental institution where doctors can help him. A juvenile that's stealing bread to help his mom, who's just maybe been beaten by a husband because he's been drinking and lost his job to an Irish immigrant. He doesn't need to be thrown into prison with hardened criminals. He needs to maybe have a juvenile detention facility. Okay. So prison, temperance, very quickly put together in one little flap. Okay? But now the next ones. Okay? Common school or education, abolition, and women's rights are all ones that I like to lump together because you can see a very perfect example of cause and effect related to the Second Great Awakening. This idea of more churches being available for people to go to. Remember, like the first one was more like scared you back to church, the First Great Awakening. As there are more churches for people to go into, you see a tying of reform into, well, let's use the young Lowell lady that now has opportunity to buy a sewing machine and is part of that middle class structure. She has a little bit more time on her hand. She can work from home. She has the sewing machine. She has an income, has more time on her hand, and now she sees churches cropping up. So she goes to church and she sees the Holy Bible and picks it up and knows that she can't read it. So what does she do? She goes out, and since she has time on her hand, she can participate in this man's movement, Horace Mann's Common School movement. Get an opportunity to have an education, no matter what your background is or whatever. Let's get better teachers in there. Let's get better facilities in there. And as that woman participates in education and gains an education, she does what? She goes back to church and she reads the Bible, where the Lord talks about how all men are created equal. And then she goes back to the Common School movement and goes to places like Mount Holyoke or Oberlin College and sees that people are getting more opportunities, like African American men's in Harvard and Oberlin, and the Americans with Disabilities through Thomas Gallaudet and Samuel Gridley Howe are getting educational opportunities. She can now learn how to read historical documents, Some fat teacher maybe taught her how to analyze documents, and she reads the DOI, the Declaration of Independence, and sees in there that all men are created equal, some message similar in the Bible. She's fueled by this, and then she thinks, well, wait a minute, why can one man own another man in the South? We need to do something about that. Hence the abolitionist movement. We need to abolish slavery. But wait a minute, nobody listens to me because I'm a woman. So what should I then also do? I should fight for women's rights. You see how all the reform movements are tied in together? Let's look at some of these characters that are on there. We have the Grimke sisters. Okay, do you see how I put up on there? Just kind of very hypnotic gaze upon them. Okay, the Grimke sisters. Do you see how they're women rights and abolitionists? Women that were daughters of plantation owners and saw the evils of slavery, how saw that slaves had their Achilles tendons torn and cut because they tried to escape. They have these stories, and they want to go to the North and tell people about how bad slavery is, but nobody wants to listen to them because they're women. So they need to fight for women's rights. Okay, we have also abolitionists that are very important, and I rank them as kind of abolitionists that talk, that need to educate people. Like William Lloyd Garrison, through The Liberator, needs to give a purpose to the abolitionist movement. We need to have one simple idea of what we're fighting for, because it can't just be to end slavery. We need to also figure out what do we do with African Americans once they have been freed. There were some people at that time that were going, well, we need to free them, and then we need to send them to Africa. And then there were some people that say we need to free them and treat them equal. And African Americans are going, how dare you? You're going to send us back to Africa? This country was built on our blood, sweat, and tears. Okay? We should have the equality as everybody in here. So William Lloyd Garrison and other people would have to fight this idea of no, abolitionist is to end slavery and to provide equality. And then you'll get powerful speakers like this man, and again, you can pause it. Okay? Okay? Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, a man that comes into the room and has that kind of aura about him that people shut up and listen to what this man has to say, as on that quote up there about how he on the 4th of July asked to be a speaker on a great day of independence, and he scolds people on a day of celebration. How dare you celebrate your independence when my brethren are still struggling, are still enslaved? How dare you? Okay? And his his publication, The North Star. Abolitionists are hugely important to spread the message. But then, well, my favorite. The grandmother who went to the South by the Underground Railroad 300-400 times and physically brought slaves back to the South, back to the North from the South. Okay, a woman that should be on your money. Okay, Harriet Tubman. Okay, and then see the transition from abolition to women's rights. Sojourner Truth, who Harriet Beecher Stowe on the bottom there, famous for a book named Uncle Tom's Cabin, said, man, this woman, she has that presence. A woman that would say, ain't I a woman, in her speeches? How dare you call me the weaker sex? I have been enslaved. I have given birth. You men just faint at the idea of you had to give birth. I have been enslaved. I have been beaten. I have been taken advantage of. Yet I am considered the weaker sex? How dare you? So we go from abolition into women's rights. And another perfect example of women that you should know, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. I mean, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, while she's fighting in abolition, trying to fight for equality, she goes into an abolitionist meeting in London with her friends, and the man in charge there tells them, oh yeah, you got something to say about slavery in America? Okay, well, look in the back room over there. There's a curtain. Why don't you sit behind it and shut the heck up? Okay? And she, grandmother, gets furious. What does she do with the help of other women? She goes to New York, upper state New York, and Seneca Falls, and has a meeting where they put together on paper, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal. Taking from the DOI and creating the Declaration of Sentiments, where instead of King George, they say he the man has done this. Giving birth, a purpose to your movement that eventually Susan B. Anthony will be able to push into a political movement, getting women the right to vote, and also on your money. She's on there, so should Harriet Tubman be. Okay? So that is the Reform era in a very quick synopsis. There were tons of players and reformers and ideas that we probably didn't have time to go over, but you can go back to your cheat sheets. Okay, and please ask me, shoot me a text. Okay, but I'll end off the video by talking about other things you could be doing to review the whole year. Here's your friend, Coach T's Hand of Knowledge. Right? Tell your parents what that is. Maybe go back through these terms and try to figure out, hey, Mom, Dad, if I go hashtag 1607, do you know where on the hand that should go? Okay, and then you can show them a blank version of this. Remember, a hand of knowledge from Coach T's class that has eras, concepts, and geography on there. Right now, can you, okay, take hashtags and put them in the right era? If I said Trail of Tears, do you know that that's under Waj Maj? Is it under the first part, or is it under Jackson? Okay, this was the last thing we did before we left. Remember, we finished out Industrial Revolution and we put these on there. Explain to your parents what some of these hashtags are. Or you go back to this picture, okay? You go back, okay, I'm working on some buttons here. You go back to this picture and go, wait a minute, let's zoom into this. And you can pause the video. Let's look at all these hashtags and be able to put a hashtag in return. Hashtag Virginia House of Burgesses. Hashtag First Assembly. Mayflower Compact. Hashtag Mayflower Compact. Hashtag First Attempt at Self-Rule. Hashtag Hooker. Hashtag Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. And then, okay, and I'll keep zooming up so you can see all the terms that are related to what era. So you go back to your hand and you see that they're all located under colonization. Okay? Tell them, look, Mayflower Compact, explain that on there. Mayflower, Pilgrims, who's John Locke? Look right over here, the red. Can you explain some of the geography that we need to know? Why is Plymouth important? Baltimore, Jamestown, Georgia. What are the Appalachian Mountains? And look how the Appalachian Mountains tie eventually into the American Revolution, the Dory, the different eras. There's the cake. Okay? You could be doing that. You could be reviewing the cake. You could be reviewing colonies and regions. Okay? Spoiler alert, stop right there if you don't want to see some hashtags that you should be able to put in the right place. Okay? Remember this from class? Pause the video there and look at that and explain all the different things. Again, pause the video for spoiler alerts. Okay, why are those things there? What is that? What does coexist mean? Why is there a ship there? Why is the fur? Okay? And there I leave you off on your little activity. Why don't you do a little optic on that and we'll pick it up from there next time. Be safe. Hopefully I'll see you soon. Okay? And post something up there on that virtual Spirit Week and give a shout out to all the great history you're learning. Okay? I miss you guys. I'll see you all soon.